You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
The following production is part of the We Be Geeks podcast collective.
Ian, look at this.
Well, it's a police box. What on earth is he doing here? I mean, these things are usually on the street. I feel it. Do you feel it?
Faint vibration.
It's alive.
Earth Station Who, a fun mashup celebrating nearly 50 years of Doctor Who universe. Hold tight. You never know where the TARDIS is going next.
You're probably a bit confused right now. I broke the glass. It's all come back to me.
What is this?
That's my ship.
What?
Let me take it from the top. Hello, I'm the Doctor. I'm a traveller in space and time. And that thing buried down there is called a TARDIS. Time and relative dimension in space. You're gonna love this.
Hey there, listeners, and welcome to the newest episode of the Earth Station Who podcast. Tonight we're giving you another panel of what we did at DragonCon 2020. This time out, we're talking about an intro to Doctor Who with our friends over at the DragonCon BritTracks. If you have any questions or feedback, please reach out at us at feedback@earthstationwho.com. We definitely would love to hear from you. Enjoy the show, and we'll see you in their next episode when all of us will be back in studio with the Faceless Ones. Take care of yourselves, peace, and enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Virtual BritTrack at the DragonCon. My name is Robin the Hat. I am the Assistant Director of the BritTrack. And to my left here, we have the lovely Director of the BritTrack, Caro. Say hi, Caro.
Hi, guys. Hi, Caro.
And then over here to my right, we have the host of Earth Station Who, Mike Faber.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here, and thank you, and hello, DragonCon.
All right. And then down here underneath Mike Faber is Howdy Mike from Earth Station Who.
Howdy.
All right. And in the window directly underneath me, we have co-host of Earth Station Who, Miss Mary Ogle.
Hi, everybody.
And then down here in this corner, right down here, we have Mr. Michael Falkner, the author of the Timestamps Project on Creative Criticality.
Hello, everybody. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah.
All right.
With a brand new spiffy camera, too.
Yeah.
Hey.
The title of today's panel is Doctor Who 101, Where to Get Started. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike over here, who is going to lead us all in a song.
That's right. All right, everyone.
No.
You ready?
DragonCon does not need that from me.
No. Come on, everyone knows the words to the Craig Ferguson song, you know. So we're ready for it. So we're going to be talking about Doctor Who 101 and how to get people involved in Doctor Who don't know about Doctor Who. They might have a passing interest in Doctor Who, and basically the way we're going to do it is our panel is going to be doing recommendations where you should step into Doctor Who or episodes that would represent the series properly, or, you know, there might even be a comic, or there might be an audio adventure. It just all depends. You know, Doctor Who has almost 60 years of a history to it. We're right now 3 years away from the 60th anniversary. So there's a lot of things to jump into. And a lot of people are like, I don't know where to get started. I've seen people wear Doctor Who t-shirts, or I've seen these people wear fezzes or bow ties or carry these sonic screwdrivers. What is this? What is it all about? What's the deal with the police box? You know, I want to know. So we're going to tell you guys tonight. So let's jump in, and if you had, to introduce to somebody to Doctor Who, I'm going to give this to Mike Falkner. How would you introduce them?
No
How would you describe to Doctor Who?
How would I describe the show, or where would I tell them to jump in? Which
How would you describe the show first?
It is, if you consider it's a show about problem solving with romance and intellect versus brute force and cynicism, as Craig Ferguson said. Right, you got an alien who seems infatuated with the planet Earth and the people of the planet Earth, and he goes out there, or she goes out there now, and they solve the problems. They help save people. They save the universe from the forces of darkness, and they do it by thinking about it. They do it by compassion. They do it by intellect and reasoning. They don't just pull out a gun and solve problems that way.
Have there been a lot of Doctor Who's, or is it just one character? How's that work?
It is. I describe it as one character with a lot of different personalities and faces, because the thread still runs throughout all of them, but you do change actors, so you change the way that the character looks and acts periodically.
Okay, so you're not describing somebody who's schizophrenic. No, he just has a lot of personality. Okay, Mary, what about you? What with Doctor Who? How would you describe what the Doctor does? How does the Doctor, just fight on Earth or have adventures? What does the episodes usually partake of?
Well, first of all, I would call him a trickster figure, and who travels through time, and he can appear in the past and the future, on Earth, on other planets and other dimensions. Pretty much anywhere you can think of, he might show up.
Okay, and is it usually just the Doctor by himself or herself now?
Well, it's actually kind of dangerous for the Doctor to travel alone. He or she knows that they need a companion in order to preserve their compassion and their humanity. Otherwise, they become a little too much of a godlike figure, and they go a bit off the rails and start believing in their own hype and in their own power. Okay. So it's very important for them to have people that around them that ground them.
Okay. Mike Gordon, what is regeneration? I've heard a lot of people, talking about that with the show.
Well, yeah, and that's a key element to what makes Doctor Who is the fact that the main character regenerates every few years into a relatively similar person, but with a little bit different personality each time. So there have been, I think, established 13 main actors that have played the Doctor in its run, and counting, right? The Doctor belongs to, until recently, the Doctor belongs to a race called the Time Lords, and they have the ability to regenerate instead of die. So they just sort of reboot themselves with a different outlook and a slightly different personality. I think the core of the character is usually the same, but with the variation depending on the actor or actress who's playing the character.
Okay. Hey, Caro, does the character or the Doctor, do they reboot the show each time the Doctor changes, or does the show just continue on?
Well, this show does continue on, except for the fact that, the show's been around for over 50 plus years, and there's been various hiatuses in the show. That's why we have a split of what people call the classic series Doctor Who and the new series Doctor Who. So the character has stayed the same. However, because of the split and regenerations that have occurred and new actors playing the Doctor, we have this divide between the classic series and the new series, and gaps in years, and even a movie in between. So
awesome. And hey, Rob,
yes.
Does the Doctor fly around in a spaceship, or I've seen this blue box or something. It looks like a telephone booth, like Bill and Ted.
The Doctor travels around in a time machine from his own planet called a TARDIS, which is an acronym for Time and Relative Dimensions in Space. It is bigger on the inside. The inside dimensions are much, much larger than the outside of the ship. There are several rooms. There's a console room. There's a bathroom that has a pool in it and maybe a library. The TARDIS is stuck in the shape of a Metropolitan Police box from the 1960s. Most TARDISes have a device called a chameleon circuit, which lets it blend into its local surroundings. But the Doctor's is broken.
Okay, awesome. So now that we've got the basics, and does Doctor Who, like you mentioned the companions, is the companions aliens also, or are they from the Doctor Who's planet? What they call it, Gallifrey? So,
are you still?
You still.
They can be aliens. Some of them are from the Doctor's planet, and he's called the Doctor, not Doctor Who.
Okay.
Some of them have been from the Doctor's planet. Some of them are aliens. Some of them are contemporary. Some of them are robots. And depending on where you read, one of them is a shape-shifting penguin. Another is a giant Tyrannosaurus robot. And one of them is from Australia.
No way.
That's the craziest one.
That's the crazy. You're talking crazy right now. You are. So, Mike Gordon, has any of these companions that the Doctor travels with, since they're human, alien, and stuff, do they die? Do they leave the TARDIS? What happens to them?
Well, I mean, that's part of the journey, right? Certainly, traveling with the Doctor on the adventures is dangerous. They have a lot of adventures over the course of the 50-some years. Various fates have been put upon a lot of the companions. I don't want to go too heavy on them because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who's new. But let's just say, don't get too invested. No, it's okay.
That's so true.
And if you hate somebody, don't worry.
So you're saying Doctor Who is just like Game of Thrones. Yeah. So basically, every couple seasons they have a red wedding. Got it. Okay.
Actually, it's not that bad. I mean, I think one of the things that we should mention too is that originally Doctor Who was created as a children's show, right? So, children's program to learn about history, as well as science facts, et cetera, et cetera. So it's got that moniker still to an extent, and it pretty much keeps in that tradition, and where, it does get kind of violent. It is, I think, what they would call maybe PG-13 now, but it's not as little kid friendly. But so you're not going to see a lot of like Game of Thrones type activities on Doctor Who.
Oh, darn. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a show on HBO.
Oh, and also, it's definitely not the Captain Jack show, Torchwood.
No, not at all.
No, exactly. So that actually leads into my next question, and this is open to all of you now. What was your very first episode of Doctor Who that you started with, and what attracted you to Doctor Who when you first saw it? Let's start with Mike Falkner.
My first episode was Rose, like most people's. It was, the 2005 premiere episode that started off the revival era of the show, with Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor. The reason I got into it was a lot of my friends at a convention I went to was a Farscape convention in Burbank, and they had looked at me and said, "Hey, we're talking about Farscape a lot, but have you ever seen Doctor Who?" And I said, "Well, I know it exists, and I know that has decades of material behind it. I don't know where to begin." They said, "Well, lucky for you." And there's a revival of it happening. It's now 3 years in. So it was on Netflix at the time. My wife and I came home. We said, let's give it a shot. And we burned through everything Netflix had in a matter of weeks. It was just go right through it. Because it was different than a lot of the sci-fi that we had seen, and it was strange enough too, because he had to get past the, I'm a Star Wars, Star Trek kind of guy at that point. So it was, getting into, okay, well, what does the British side of the house do with their science fiction? What's the history of these characters? Kind of really investing myself into it. It was kind of a learning curve to go through, but it was so fun that we just kept rolling with it.
What made you go back to the old series?
That was, once we had completed, I started that in 2014, so it would have been, what is that, like Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi's era. I was like, okay, well, I've experienced all of New Who. Where do I go from here? Well, there's so much they talk about that I don't know anything about. And so I went back and found the pilot, Unearthly Child, and said, let me start here. That's the beginning. Let's go there. And it just snowballed from there. Like, oh, that was pretty good. Oh, the Daleks is really good. Okay, let's see what else this has to offer. And then, of course, I'm a writer, so it turned into a blogging project, and here we are.
I got a question for you regarding that, because there's so many people that have joined, with New Who in the last, little over a decade now. And since there was that break between Classic Who and New Who, since you've started with New Who and you've gone back, do you find that rewarding? Do you appreciate New Who even more because of that?
Yes, because there is the hurdle of getting into classic science fiction. It doesn't move as quickly, and it builds a lot based on the eras in which it was developed. And you watch the mythology build, and then you get back to New Who again, because the Timestamps Project went, from the beginning until, it keeps rolling, through what's available now. And I'm picking up all these little seeds and stuff they dropped along the way that didn't make any sense the first time through. And it's actually very rewarding to see the character development, to see, characters like Sarah Jane Smith come back, and you're like, oh, okay, and now I understand why fans love her so much, and so do I. It's stuff like that just the payoff now is going back to the new series and seeing all the building blocks in place.
Of course. What about you, Kara?
My first episode was Battlefield with the Seventh Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy. And I caught it on play rerun on PBS when I was living in California. And they just happened to have random completely out of order episodes that they'd purchase and hadn't bought whole seasons of. And I was 12, and I thought it was the weirdest episode ever, because it's the Doctor and the science fiction, and then you've also got the element of the Brigadier in Unit, which is a whole military aspect of the show that they've thrown in. And then you've got Merlin, them calling Merlin, and you've got Arthurian legend and Mordred and all these characters, because there's a rip in space and time. And I, at the time, had been in school. We had just read Mort to Arthur, and so I'd really gotten Arthurian legend. And so I was like, what am I watching? And so I fell in love with it. But the next weekend when it aired again was Sea Devils episode.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And with John Pertwee, and the Sea Devils episode has him fighting one of his many mortal enemies, who's also the same species as him, called the Master. And they were fencing and sword fighting, which barely had anything to do with the plot of the episode. But there was an acid lake, a lake made of acid, and then we had sword fighting, and I was just like, what am I watching? And when later on, when I was 13, my dad got stationed actually just outside of London, so we were there, living there for a little while, and then I actually got to sit at 12 and 13 and watch things consecutively, because they would, broadcast it, and I just fell in love, with the show as a result of the classic series. So, I recommend starting
You had a rough beginning.
Yeah. Good.
Hold
that thought. We're not going to tell where we're going to tell them to start yet.
Okay.
We'll get to that. That's going to be the. Okay, Rob. What about you?
I started watching Doctor Who. It was the summer of '82, and I was taking a bath. It was in this summer break, and my grandmother knocked on the door and said, "Hey, there's this show coming on PBS. It's called Doctor Who. It sounds like a science fiction." And I said, "Ooh, that sounds like something I might be able to watch." Actually, okay, I'm paraphrasing. I probably said, "Okay." But,
that sounds more like it, yeah.
Yeah. So I got out of the tub and I went to the living room, and it was the 5 Doctors. So talk about confusing. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But I loved it. But then that was it until about 6 months later for New Year's. They started with Robot. They started with the first of the Tom Baker series. And I was hooked after that. I begged my great-grandmother to crochet me a scarf, a Tom Baker scarf, which I still have almost 35 years later.
Wow.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Nice.
Okay, Mary, what about you?
Well, I started watching Doctor Who when it was on, the 4th Doctor was on PBS just constantly when I was a kid. But I don't remember what the first episode was, to be honest. And I wasn't really a fan. It was more my sister who watched it, and I was just there. But I started rewatching from Rose, but it didn't really grab me until The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances. And that episode just is so bonkers. I mean, you've got a creepy child whose face is morphing into a gas mask. You've got Captain Jack, who's campy and fun and just sort of all over the place. You've got, Rose and the Doctor just riffing off each other in a great way. And it just, the absurdity of it, the comedy of it, the horror of it, I mean, all together and all working together. And I was just like, what is going on? This is the most amazing thing I have ever seen. And that was it. I was hooked. And then I was obsessed with it. Then I had to go back and watch Classic Who, and I fell in love with Patrick Troughton. And, it was, I highly recommend anyone who hasn't watched Patrick Troughton to go back and watch, because I think you'll enjoy. You'll really enjoy those.
Exactly. And you'll see a lot of Matt Smith Doctor in Patrick Troughton, which is pretty awesome.
Or the other way around, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So awesome. Mikey.
Much the same as Mary. And I discovered Doctor Who in the 70s. After that little independent movie Star Wars came out that not a lot of people saw, but I liked it a lot. You
were the one, huh? It's your fault.
I was really into it, man. I know, crazy, right? So I ate up like everything science fiction, Battlestar Galactica, all that kind of stuff. And they had a Star Wars radio show that aired, an adaptation of Star Wars radio show that aired on what is it? Not NPR,
National
right?
Public Radio.
NPR. Yeah. So NPR did that, and afterwards they would air new episodes of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I fell in love with. I absolutely fell in love with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, fell in love with all things Douglas Adams, immediately bought all the books. And so that sort of level of humor and science fiction and storytelling really excited me. And when I just happened to catch Doctor Who on PBS, because it was airing every weeknight on, I think at 7 or 7:30 on PBS there, I would catch it when I could. It wasn't easy for me. This was before DVR, way before DVRs, even before I had a VCR. So there was a lot I could only catch it. So there was a lot of times where I'd see the cliffhanger, but I'd never know how it was resolved for years, for decades. But I was in love with Tom, I think my first, I can't remember the first story I saw, but I'm pretty sure I was introduced to Tom and Leela first. And I was at the right age where Leela was like, yep, that's got my attention. Yeah, not just for dads. So, and then I fell in love with Sarah Jane as well. And then when Tom left, I tapped out. I was not a big fan of the changeover. I wasn't really too familiar with all the doctors that came before Tom. So I kind of tuned out, and I remained tuned out until the Fox movie, which I really liked, and but I saw a lot of potential there. And when New Who came, I was really ready to just jump on board, and I saw that first episode, Rose, and I've been a huge fan and invested fully in the franchise ever since.
That's awesome. That is awesome. My history with Doctor Who is kind of similar to Mike Gordon's. Basically, I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and being a latchkey kid, my parents were always out of the house. And so, it was a Saturday afternoon, and I was just flipping through cable channels, and we just happened to have WOR from New York. And Saturday afternoons, they ran all the Doctor Who stories all together, so they didn't do the half-hour cliffhangers.
Right.
And so I got to see the Talons of Wai Chiang for my very first story. And it was the Doctor fighting ninjas with a Chinese midget. It was awesome. And it was just a great, great story with giant rats. And I was probably at the most 10 years old. So it caught my attention right away. And I drifted off from Doctor Who maybe about a year or two. And then I found out that the local PBS station was showing the half-hour episodes of Doctor Who every weeknight at 11 p.m. So I had a TV in my room by that time, and I got to watch Doctor Who. And I started with, I think it was The Wheel in Space, with the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry. And it was awesome. And I was hooked ever since. And I've been a Doctor Who fan ever since. The only problem was where I grew up, Doctor Who was only Tom Baker for me. When they got to the regeneration with Logopolis, they started back always at the beginning with Robot. And so it just went through the whole Tom era. And I watched it every time still. And then at pledge time, they started showing the other doctors. They started showing some of the third Doctor, some of the fifth Doctor. And then they showed in 1983, they showed the 5 Doctors. So it was awesome to see. And also that's the era where Marvel Comics was starting to reprint the British Doctor Who comics here in the States. So I caught up on that, and I just started going there, and I never looked back. So that was my Doctor Who intro. And I was lucky enough to be able to teach Judy how to like it and what to introduce her. And that's what we'll do in a second, where we introduce the different people or what you would recommend. But I also got to introduce my son to Doctor Who. And for me, I introduced him with Rose, like Mike Falkner did, because I thought it was a good starting point for somebody. Instead, you didn't have to learn all the history and everything. And this was probably 2005, and I didn't have all the DVDs at the time or stuff like that. So we started with Rose, and when they started showing it on Sci-Fi and then coming out with the box set for the 9th Doctor, we picked it up as soon as it came out. So it was pretty awesome. So that's how I did it. What would you guys recommend for somebody who doesn't know Doctor Who? You know, we've talked a little bit about the Doctor's history, how you explain the Doctor, but how would you recommend somebody who's never watched the show? Do you recommend starting at the beginning of the new series, at the beginning of the classic series, or is there a certain episode you would recommend for somebody to start watching Doctor Who with? Let's start with Mike Gordon.
Well, I would definitely suggest that they start with the first episode of, pick a Doctor. Certainly it depends on the person. But I think starting if you're watching, starting your journey with Doctor Who, I think you should start with the first episode of whatever that Doctor's first episode is. Now, you mentioned Rose. I think that's an excellent one because that was when Doctor Who came back after a long time. So that was a great introduction episode. Matt Smith's introduction, I think his first episode is, to me, in my mind, the best first Doctor or first appearance of a Doctor incarnation ever. So that one's a great one to start with. But, if you go back even further, I do think that at some point, any Doctor Who fan should watch the very first Hartnell episode just to put that in your geek box, to have that history, and so you can understand where the character and where the franchise started. Whether you continue from that, it's up to you. And some Doctors are look, I tapped out after Tom left, so I get it when people say that, oh, this is not my Doctor, I can't really watch anymore. I get that. So everybody's got a Doctor that really kind of appeals to them. So it's just a matter of finding that one, I think.
No, that's really good. I like how you said that. What about you, Mary?
Well, for New Who, usually, like Mike said, I usually recommend either Rose or The 11th Hour, kind of depending on the person and what I know about them and what kind of storytelling they like. A lot of people recommend Blink. I don't usually recommend that one because it's a Dr. Light episode and it's not real. It's a great, fantastic, amazing episode, but it's not really representative of Doctor Who.
Sure.
For classic Who, I often recommend Spearhead from Space, which is the third Doctor episode. It's in color.
It's the first color Doctor Who, actually.
Yeah.
And it's just a great episode, and Pertwee is really great in it, and it's got a lot of comic elements that are really fun. And a lot of times, if people are interested in Troughton, I'll recommend Tomb of the Cybermen because it's just such a great episode, and Troughton's just so good in it.
That might have been the first one I saw him in too, and that is a good one.
Oh, it's a great one, and it's fun because the Doctor takes charge right away and has the Cybermen and in their glory, which is pretty awesome. That's awesome. Caro, what about you?
I think it depends on what kind of person you are. So the brilliance of Doctor Who is that every iteration of the Doctor has some sort of personal characteristic that's the strongest or stands out the most. Meaning some of them, are kind of a little dark. Some of them are really campy and, enjoy a good laugh. And then you've got some that are more mad scientist-y. So I think if you, depending on what you like, you're going to fall in love with the show by starting with that kind of idea, reflecting on what do I watch now? What do I like now? And then where can I go from there? For me, I love cult classics. I love anything that's camp. I love anything that's, got that kind of element to it. So I fell in love with Pertwee and with the Seventh Doctor with Sylvester McCoy. McCoy is what I guess I would call my Doctor, only because he's got crazy episodes. I mean, he's got one where he goes to a psychedelic circus. And what is it? Greatest Show.
Greatest Show in the Galaxy.
Greatest Show in the Galaxy. We just did that one.
It's the Greatest Show in the Galaxy, which is a great episode. And then Survival was my other favorite because it's got cheetah people in it. And so you've got crazy clownish things going on in one episode. You've got Merlin in another episode, and then you got a Merlin element again, and bringing back Morgana, and you got just it's all over the place. And then Pertwee, with Pertwee, I think he's one of the best episodes for me is Sea Devils just because how crazy it is. But if you want to get to know the Doctor, getting to know the arch enemy of the Doctor, the Master, and starting off with Terror of the Autons is really, you get introduced to the Master in a really great way. And I think that some people have akin Doctor Who to the Sherlock Holmes archetype. And, I think that stands out a lot in that episode. So if you like Sherlock, if you're really into that, you might kind of get that feel of the dynamic, the Moriarty, Sherlock dynamic that you get with the Master and the Doctor. So I think that that's a really good episode to start off with.
That's awesome. Mr. Falkner.
Oh, we've said so many good ones that were on the tip of my tongue. I will go back to Robot for Series 12. It's the Fourth Doctor's introduction. It's a regeneration episode, so you got a fresh new character. That episode is packed to the gills with humor. It makes you love Tom Baker as the Doctor, because he seems like he's not taking things seriously, but you look in the background, he's calculating everything. He's crunching all the numbers to figure out what the solution to the problem is. The monster is just a giant robot. It's a giant robot that's brought about by scientifically based Nazis. It's kind of weird. And he, as you do.
Well, as we like to say, because Doctor Who.
Right. But it's also got Sarah Jane Smith in there, who's one of my favorite companions. The Doctor has his trademark scarf that he introduced in that episode, which he uses as both a weapon and a scientific instrument. And then from there, what if you like what you see in Robot, that's when you stick around for the rest of Series 12, where you go into the Ark in Space, Sontaran Experiment, Genesis of the Daleks, and Revenge of the Cybermen. And you get a whole smorgasbord of what Doctor Who is in a series of like 5 or 6 stories. And it just, that is like the introduction, 101 to the Fourth Doctor and to what Doctor Who really is.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Cool. Rob.
Well, for new people who've never seen Doctor Who,
never seen Doctor Who at all. They've been walking around Dragon Con. They've been seeing people wearing the scarves. They've been seeing these salt and pepper shakers with stalks coming out of it at the con.
Are those anime?
Exactly. Or people with spaghetti, down and, all this kind of stuff. What would you tell these people? How would you get them to watch Doctor Who?
I would tell them to start with Rose, the first episode of the new series. It was specifically written for people who had not seen Doctor Who, to introduce them to the basic concepts. He's an alien. He travels in time and space. His spaceship is bigger on the inside. And he fights the bad guys. Plus, it also introduced a new concept that he is not perfect, which is something that we always got, that we know as fans. But he's not perfect. And then in the next episode, it introduces the fact that he's the last of his people. He's the last Time Lord. And that is a revelation that echoes both forward in the series and backward into the classic series. Now, once you get involved, I would recommend going to watch City of Death, Fourth Doctor, Second Romana episode. And it's perfect, classic Doctor Who. It's the first episode to be shot on location in another country. It's shot in Paris, and it has great supporting characters, has a great bad guy in Julian Glover. It has just great pacing, great writing. It was written by Douglas Adams, and it has great cameos, including John Cleese from Monty Python.
Very true. Very, very true. That's awesome. I'm going to have to agree with everything everyone here said. So go watch those, folks. But no, seriously, for people who have never seen Doctor Who before, try to find where it's streaming. It's been changing locations a lot lately where you could see Doctor Who. New series is now on HBO Max. And it's no longer on Amazon or on Netflix. So it's living only on HBO Max. So it's a little more difficult. And classic series, there's lots of ways to see the classic series, but mostly BritBox is a great way if you get a chance to see it.
As far as streaming, they've split it up. So that's kind of unfortunate, but I guess it is what it is, right?
Right. Oh, exactly. And that's the cool thing about it too, is there's, you could also, I know if you're into streaming and such, you could also have Pluto TV actually has a Doctor Who channel that, that they stream old series Doctor Who 24 hours a day as one of their channels, which is awesome. They put the commercials in at the worst spots, though. They totally do. So
yeah, it was never meant to have commercials in it anyway.
Well, it was like BBC America, I know. It's like, because, and if you're ever going to get new Doctor Who, basically what, you'll be able to see it on BBC America if you're here in the United States, or there's also Space in Canada. There's also BBC in the UK. So there's lots of different places to see it. I know, with Doctor Who also, it's just what we did for our podcast, Earth Station Who, the first, I think, 12 episodes, 13 episodes, what we did was we did the first Doctor, started with him, and we watched the first episode, and then we watched his last episode.
Right.
And then we went to the next and witnessed the regeneration, and then we watched the first of the second Doctor, and we went all the way then to the end of that Doctor, and so on and so forth. So we got to watch and review all the regeneration stories on the podcast.
The first and last stories, yeah.
Exactly. But you're missing, if you just watch those stories to begin with, you're missing a lot. And also, it's hard to find the Sixth Doctor regenerate into the Seventh Doctor.
Well, and you can't even watch the last Hartnell story.
No. Well, actually, now you can. They came out with the 10th Planet.
Oh, that's true. That's true. The thing that makes it crazy, though, is that those, and that's why it's kind of crazy. Because even though we're recommending start with those, with the first Doctor, the first appearance of the first Doctor stories, those aren't the best episodes. So, not to say that they're the worst, but if all of us here named our favorite episodes, I bet very few of them would actually be first Doctor, their first appearances. So yeah, if you just know when you start, stay with it, because it, if you invest in it, it will pay off.
Exactly. Because a lot of the times when you see the Doctor regenerate, the actor isn't all new in this role, doesn't have, it's set yet, even though a lot of times when they do the production, they film the stories with the Doctor so the actor can get more comfortable a couple stories in. And so you'll see, with Peter Davison, I know they filmed a couple episodes, storylines in, and you'll see that his hair is actually longer in the regeneration story that he did with Castor Valva than it was later in. And so it's interesting to see. Like Mike said, my favorite regeneration story is the 11th Hour with Matt Smith taking over as the 11th Doctor.
So good.
Because that one was a brand new TARDIS, a brand new Doctor, a brand new companion, and a brand new showrunner starting, you also had that with the 9th Doctor, but this was an established series as in the new series, and it was right off all the way through. It's a lot of fun, and the character shows you this is what you're going to get. This is not the same Doctor you had previously. And even more so than other Doctors, because it takes a couple storylines for the Doctor to cook. You find that especially in the old series too.
Yeah.
Especially with the 6th Doctor, do not start your journey with the twin dilemma.
No,
really,
because you'll set it down and not come back.
No, you won't want to come back to Doctor Who if you do that.
And the arc, it's sad to say that too, because the arc of the 6th Doctor, I see what they tried to do, but they miscalculated when they started it, and that's a hard spot to start in.
Well,
like you said, it takes a while.
We talked about that last night in facts we didn't know about Doctor Who, that the 6th Doctor was a Doctor of regeneration gone wrong,
right?
And because they were running into a lot of political stuff, a lot of rating stuff, and Doctor Who actually went on hiatus after one of Colin's seasons. And what they were supposed to do is the Doctor was going to be evolving and finalizing into a final form, and they were never able to get to that. That's why there is something out there called exactly. But there is something out there called Big Finish, which is Doctor Who audios. We haven't even talked about that tonight.
No.
And
I wouldn't start with those.
No, but there are some great ones. And actually, the French Doctor is great in the Big Finish.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a whole nother panel for Dragon Con for the BritTrack, which you can find on our social media on the weekend of the convention. So
exactly. So it is pretty cool. So I think we're having a blast talking about Doctor Who. And I don't want to tell people what to stay away from, because there's plenty to stay away from.
Well, I think that's a good point too. And I think, look, I know a lot of people get, especially modern audiences, don't feel like they want to go back because, well, some of them are in black and white, and sometimes that's something that counts against them, right? Particularly as good as I love Troughton as well, the second Doctor. But it's kind of unfortunate that in the first Doctor and the second Doctor, a lot of their stories are missing still.
Right.
So you're not going to get you're going to watch it and things are going to happen from story to story. Companions are going to leave, and you're not going to know why some of them left, who the new people are, and it's just it's kind of rough actually. The Doctors will kind of hold you along, but it's kind of rough. And certainly, throughout most of the 70s and 80s, the effects now look like, ridiculous. So it is difficult for modern viewers to find, to overcome those in order to watch them, which is unfortunate because the performances are usually really good.
Well, it's really like once you get into it and you get into these episodes where you get so hooked into the character. I mean, the show is gut-wrenching at various different points because of how attached you get. And I know for me, when I, went back and have rewatched it as I've gotten older, the Green Death with John Pertwee, when Joe departs, you get to see the Doctor. I mean, it's amazing acting by John Pertwee in the episode, and you get to see him really upset in a unique kind of way, for like the first time. I mean, you've seen him grumpy and angry and conflicted in the first and second Doctor, but to see that episode is just gut wrenching. It's like if you're a new series fan and when Donna Noble, she leaves in the End of Time, and her storyline, that everything that happens with her, go back and watch that episode, and you get the same kind of feeling. So I think that's the uniqueness of the show, is that there's something in it for everybody. So if you like to cry, you're going to have episodes you're going to like. If you like to laugh, there's going to be episodes you're going to like. If you like the camp, it's going to have literally anything that you can think of, depending on where you start.
And don't forget the scary moments, because it's got scary moments.
Especially. Well, and that's one of the great things, if you could get to watch the old series, each episode used to end in a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And especially like the older ones, a lot of the series, when they were done the storyline, they went into the next storyline as a cliffhanger. And a lot of times, they gave hints of what was to come and everything. Like a lot of like Tom Baker stories. How will Sarah Jane get out of this one? Or stuff like that. And that was always great. And that's what I appreciated watching it in the half-hour formats, because you had that. And there was parts of the new series, especially like the Capaldi era, where every part of that season was a two-parter, and you got the cliffhangers and stuff, which was awesome. And
it's still the classic series is still more accessible to join like mid-season, to just watch a story here and there, because they didn't have DVRs. Back then television was a lot different wherever it was. So you had, people, every time you watch something, it's someone's first time, right? So you kind of have to account for that. Whereas now the storylines are kind of convoluted, and if you start mid-season or mid-Doctor, sometimes you won't really understand what's going on. I think with that, you have to start at, that's why we recommend starting at the beginning.
Well, either that or just start at the beginning of a season at least.
Right.
Yeah. For the new, especially the new series, because they have continuing storylines through what's going on. And the classic series, as long as you started at the beginning of that story, you were fine. Yeah.
Right.
You were fine. And so it was pretty awesome when you had that kind of stuff. And Doctor Who is great that there's multiple points where you could jump in, and you don't need to know the history of the villains, or, oh wait, this is the villain who started his big plan back in episode 2 of season 3, stuff like that,
There's one-off episodes here and there that are just like by themselves are just amazing. Like, like Smile and Midnight. Those are really, really great episodes.
Girl in the Fireplace.
Yeah.
Just stay away from the episode with the Absorb-A-Lot. You'll be fine. It'll be okay.
I didn't like Midnight myself.
Really? I liked it. It's a hit or miss.
Oh, I thought Midnight was amazing.
Midnight could be actually made into a play, which would have been awesome. It would have been great to do. Also, if you get a chance, Girl in the Fireplace.
Oh, yes.
You'll be in tears. You'll be in tears by the end of that one.
But the core of Doctor Who is change. And that's the great thing about it. And I think one of the reasons why people love it so much is if you don't like an episode, the next one's going to be completely different.
Exactly.
You're always going to be able to find something to love about it.
Yeah, even the historical figures, we haven't really talked about that, because he does travel back in time to different, time periods, and he encounters all sorts of characters throughout history. I mean, he meets Dickens, he meets Vincent van Gogh, which is an amazing episode.
Oh yeah, this last season, the Doctor just met Nikola Tesla, and Thomas Edison, so it was pretty awesome. And like you said, the season before, Rosa Parks. So there's definitely very historical stories where they meet, and they have fixed points in time where they can't change anything. So
like Pompeii, Pompeii is one of my favorite new series, episodes is Pompeii. I think that it's a great, it's a great episode. So Donna yelling at the Doctor.
And that's the cool thing. Each companion, when they're with the Doctor, has a different dynamic. There's no two companions that were ever the same with the Doctor, which was awesome.
We've mentioned how, each, depending on your personality, you might be attracted or, interested in a particular Doctor. But the fact of the matter is that the Doctor usually isn't alone. So it's how they interact with their companions, who those companions are, that whole Team TARDIS thing, whoever's, traveling with them, that's what brings you in and pulls you in.
Yeah, and you become part of the fam. It's awesome.
It's like we said before, too, those companions remind the Doctor of what it means to have a human side. I mean, the Doctor's not, depending on which story you watch, he or she isn't necessarily human, but to interact with humanity, they have to have sort of that humanity with them. And the companions help to remind the character of the Doctor, what it means to be human. There's one point with the Fifth Doctor's run when one of the companions says, "You know what? This isn't for me," and departs the TARDIS. Because
you've actually had companions that have failed too. Yeah. That you had a companion took advantage of going forward in time and got all this modern technology, and the Doctor was pissed off as hell because of that. So it was real interesting to see. There's so much for Doctor Who, but this is just an intro. This is Doctor Who 101. So thank you guys for listening to our nonsense today. It was a lot of fun as always. Let's thank, of course, Caro and Rob for having us. It's always a pleasure for you guys to let us blab about Doctor Who. And you guys have been great to us over the years. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate that.
Well,
and of course,
thank you, Mike. You've every single one of you have been absolutely spiffing in working with us for over a decade. So thank you so much.
Now I feel old.
I was going to say that. Like, whoa.
I don't travel through time. Sorry, I'm just trudging along year after year.
I've been on the BritTrack for almost 20 years, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Good point. So, of course, Mr. Mike Falkner, how can people find you?
You can find the Timestamps Project, which we mentioned before is a look at Doctor Who, starting at the very first episode, walking week by week through those stories up to the 10th Doctor now as we record this. I'll be finishing his run by the end of the year. You can find that at creativecriticality.net.
Excellent. And Mary Ogle, Mr. Mike Gordon, and myself are all part of Earth Station Who. We are part of the ESO network. You could find us wherever fine podcasts are found. We come out every other week, except for when the new series is on. We're weekly, and we review Doctor Who. We review comics. We review books. We review Big Finish. We talk about everything Doctor Who. Some good, some bad. You'll hear it all. You know, we've been doing this for about 8 years now. So we've been talking all about Doctor Who, and we're just having a blast. And we have no signs of letting up. So thank you, Dragon Con. Thank you. Earth Station Who, we have a brand new website coming very soon. Probably by the time Dragon Con rolls around, you'll be able to go to earthstationwho.com to see all our past episodes. So Thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you so much for everything. The BritTrack at DragonCon, of course, is a fan track at DragonCon. We've been around since, I want to say, 1987. We've been around in some iteration or form, and we've been the BritTrack for the past 15 years. So you can find us on social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just look for us at BritTrack, and you'll find us. So thank you so much.
Okay. Don't you look tired?
No. I'm a little tired. Like that joke. All right. Well, thank you so much, DragonCon, for everything. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
See you around next time.
You have been listening to Earth Station Who, a bi-weekly pop culture podcast dedicated to all things Doctor Who, featuring talents from across the universe. All topics on the show are the sole opinions of the individual and are used for entertainment value alone. You can subscribe to our podcast up on iTunes, Stitcher, or follow our blog at www.esopodcast.com. You can also follow us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+. If you enjoyed the show, please leave feedback up on iTunes.
Claire here with a special announcement. Contrary to popular belief, I didn't cancel Dr. Geek's laboratory. It fell into development purgatory thanks to MacGuffinite crystals or some such science from fiction nonsense. I've put an end to that. I locked all the staff inside the laboratory for the duration of the crisis. Now they can create 24/7 without petty distractions like home lives or free will. Look for new Dr. Geek episodes coming soon. The gay dynamics last up against the wall when the robots ride.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.